Well, hello and welcome to this episode of our Action Coach Business Spotlight series. I'm very excited to have Cruiz Emery on this episode with me. Cruiz, hello, thank you for joining. I hope you're doing well today.
I definitely am. I hope you're doing well as well.
I am. It's a good day. So, Cruiz, you and your wife, Kiera, are the owners of the Medicap Pharmacy and Compounding in Concord, North Carolina. Here, Action Coach Lake Norman, Action Coach of North Carolina, we're focused on our local community, so Charlotte and the greater Charlotte area. It seems like it just keeps growing out,
Definitely
and
is.
everything. But have had that community pharmacy there for coming on 2 years, and then additionally a kind of a cohesive and holistic approach there, compounding supplements as well as another business for a little bit longer than that. So
hmm
that's what I've understood so far. Could you give us a bit more insight to your business and your team?
Yeah, definitely. So, like you said, so we actually own two businesses. We actually started our supplement business first.
Okay.
My wife, being a pharmacist, she designed this line of supplements that help people that are on long-term medications combat the side effects that those medications have. And then, yeah, but roughly a year later, a local pharmacy came up for sale, and we decided to jump at the opportunity because that's one thing we always wanted to do coming out of college is own our own small independent pharmacy. So, it's something that's 10 minutes away from your house, doesn't not going to happen every day. So we jumped at it. And yeah, about 2 years ago, we closed on the pharmacy and we've been operating it since then.
So I'm focused in any client conversations and coaching businesses for scale growth and strategies on that unique value proposition. So something having a background in healthcare kind of just hit me. A unique mix started in supplements to combat the side effects,
hmm
community pharmacy. So I'm feeling kind of a what's in it that's best for the patient focus based on the combination of supplements to combat. There's obviously a focus on minimizing those effects in the first place. What does
hmm
it feel like coming into your pharmacy? What does that focus feel like, that combination, and how do you balance it a little bit if you can share that with us, because that's quite unique.
Right. Yeah. So it's very interesting how the healthcare industry is kind of steered for the past couple decades. It's become more and more pharmaceutical driven, which pharmaceuticals of course have their place in healthcare.
Of course.
If you have acute illnesses or diseases or anything like that, if you're sick and you need a antibiotic, it has its place to do that. But one thing we would like to try to focus on is when a patient comes in and we see they're on their medication regularly, which is first off a good thing, be on your medication when you need it. But also, if they're still complaining, like okay, they know they can't sleep, they're getting swelling in their ankles, they're getting all these other things. We like to have that take the opportunity to actually coach them through, like, okay, well, maybe you don't need to get onto another medication. Maybe you just need, maybe you're just deficient in potassium. Hey, have you tried this supplement? Try
Mm.
this out for a month or two and see if that, you see improvements in that ankle swelling that you're getting. Really just to be able to have that touch point impact on a patient instead of them just going on and next thing you know, they're on 12, 14, 16 different drugs, minimizing to keep them, yeah, on the stuff they need to stay healthy, but not just adding on to the pile and be able to really just have that impact on them.
There's the key word that kind of stuck with me, is that impact. And I think that
Mhm.
the relationship that would be formed by way of that high touch, interactive, personal. I think you've got kind of this motto. You can speak to mission and vision of your business, of the Medicap pharmacy or your business as a whole, but you've got this motto of making time for
Right. Yeah,
those.
yeah, definitely. It's really interesting because we get patients that, of course, have been here for years. And then, for some reason or other, they'll have an experience at a CVS or Walgreens and they'll come back and like, they'll just appreciate, being a patient of ours so much more because if you drive up to our drive through, you don't spend more than 10 minutes here unless you're just having a conversation with us. Then you're
Mhm.
not waiting for your medication. You're not waiting in a line, not waiting in the queue kind of thing. So it's being able to have that one-on-one direct impact. And also, if you call our pharmacy, you're going to get answered. We're going to answer the phone within the first three rings, and if we don't, we're going to call you back immediately. Like it's much more patient focused and just one-on-one attention that you're going to be able to get at a Walgreens or CVS. We see 100 patients a day. CVS sees 1,000 patients a day. nothing against their pharmacy or their staff, but they just don't have they don't have the bandwidth to have that one-on-one conversation with you. Where
And
we,
it's a business model,
Mhm.
right? It's a business model. You've
Yep,
intentionally, you said that you had the dream together with Kiera to have a community pharmacy.
right,
So you weren't seeking the experience that a corporate chain, high volume pharmacy
right,
offers. And so those that look to come to you obviously are looking for the right thing in the bottle and the right count, right?
right,
But
of
they're looking
course.
for more than that. Clearly, they value more than that. But it's not correct to assume that because you give that additional time with each patient, and the joke, of course, in healthcare is we're called patients because it takes forever to get anything done, right? You have to be
Right,
patient. But the complexity in your business, I mean, you're also a specialty compounding pharmacy, correct?
right. So
So
that's a very unique thing that you're not going to get out of CVS or Walgreens. They do not compound medications. And it seems like less and less pharmacies are doing it now because a couple of years ago, regulations tightened up on compounding pharmacies, especially for the hazardous drugs. So, your testosterones and stuff like that, where it's hazardous compounding. Where we decided early on, like once we bought the pharmacy, before those regulations became enforced, we invested the 6 figures that needed to get invested to upgrade our compounding lab to meet those standards. So now we're able to compound custom medications for people. I mean, it's honestly that's the area where we're trying to grow, because you can have such a large impact. So one great story, I don't want to take this too long, but
please do share, please.
um 2 weeks ago we had a lady come in. She rescues cats.
Okay.
So she had 34 cats that she happened to get a bad bag of cat food that actually gave them food poisoning. So all of her cats were, vomiting, diarrhea. It was a mess apparently. So she came to us. We gave her some tablets or some capsules, sorry, of a medication that the vet prescribed. And we did warn her, like, it might be hard to give 34 cats a capsule. It's going to be a bad day. If you have any issues, give us a call back. Lo and behold, she came back. She had scratches all over her face and arms. She was like, "Yeah, that was a nightmare. No, what else can we do?" So we compounded a solution. So crushed up the tablets, put it into a suspension, flavored it, so that way she could just put it on, the cat's new good food, hopefully unpoisoned food, and see if
Yes.
the cats would eat it that way and get the medication in that way. Um, we did find out after that. She went back, tried that out. Because the cats were sick, they were not wanting to eat. So that actually was not a good solution to do. But what's cool is we can just keep brainstorming. So we actually were able to put it into a cream and we have little dispensing pens with a little tip on it, and you just do a couple clicks and you actually just rub that cream into the ear. So you get to get transdermal medication instead. So the medication will be absorbed through the skin inside the cat's ear, and that's how they get the medication. So we gave that to her, and she did that, and she was more than happy. She was ecstatic. She said the cats, like, they just treat it as kind of pet time, because she
Uh-huh.
got to put it in their ear and she got to like kind of rub it into their ear, so got some petants. And she said that was so
Perfect.
much easier. That was perfect. And actually, I spoke to her today because she has cancer. So she needs more medication. But out of the 34 cats, only 2 are still sick. So it was a great solution for the
Huge
majority of
win.
the cats.
And a
Yeah.
partnership that, like you say, you wouldn't get elsewhere. That
Yeah.
willingness to come. I have this visual, this willingness to come around the counter and out from behind
Yeah. Right.
and have that conversation to be like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what happened? And oh, wait, let's try this, and we'll tell you think this will
Yeah.
work. And it's that relationship and that
Yeah.
partnership. Um, with respect to your team and the culture there, I'm assuming that just carries it's not a just because culture is never easy.
Right.
For your team, size of your team again?
So right now we're about 5.
Okay. All right. So good sized team.
Mm-hmm.
Retail, so scheduling, skilled, and
Mm-hmm.
certified and licensed is probably the right term.
Yeah.
So lots of not anybody can do every job type of thing as well, I would
Right.
assume. Okay. Um, biggest challenges in facilitating that type of a work environment,
Mm-hmm.
looking for that type of talent, things that come to mind with challenges you face, some of the strategies or the things you're currently trying to do, because a lot of the listeners out there, they've got the great idea, but you can't go as far as you want to go on your own 99.9% of the time. It takes a team.
Right.
So from a
It
team
does.
perspective.
So actually, that's something we're still struggling with on a day-to-day basis, right? So being newer business owners, a little bit less experience as far as people management, as far as the ownership role. I know, of course, I have leadership experience, in the Navy, but that's a whole different type of experience. So that
Right.
I would
And different
say,
reporting structure. Yeah.
yeah, people management is a difficult one. So one thing, if we could go back, turn the clocks and go back and do it again, we'd probably be a little more um, willing to let people go that were not fitting. So we did, I'll admit, kept people for too long. Kept trying to, coach them, kept trying to mold them into what we wanted them to be. But sometimes it's not going to happen. And,
Mm-hmm.
nothing against them. They were a great employee, just didn't fit what we wanted to fit. So I think just navigating those things, make sure, let people go that are not going to be a good fit. And honestly, if it's not a good fit for you, that means it's not a good fit for them either. They might succeed more somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So really just overcoming that. But then, yeah, like you're saying, like making sure you get people that are in the right seat, right? You might have the right people, but they might be in the wrong seat. So great example is one of our technicians. We had her upfront customer facing technician. And she was good in the aspect of, the details of her job. But as far as customer service, she just didn't really have the thing that makes customer service great. She doesn't have the bubbly personality or anything like that. So she expressed interest in the compounding side of it. So we moved her into the compounding lab, trained her up there, sent her down to Florida for training, get certified and everything. And she's just excellent in the compounding lab.
Excelling in that
Yeah,
role.
she can she likes the idea of making things custom, making things like that, and she doesn't have to be customer facing anymore. She still helps out as needed, but for the
Yeah.
most part, she's there. And she said she's found her dream job now. This is great. So I think really just making sure not only they have the right people, but they're in the right seat is the very difficult part. And then with small business, to your point, like scheduling, yeah, that's that's a pain in the butt. Not gonna lie, because like for instance, if our compounding tech calls out, we don't have a secondary compounding tech. She is the compounding tech. So that's when I have to get my butt into the compounding room and do it. Don't mind doing it, but that's not my day job. But of course, fill in when you need to. When you're small business
That's
ownership, the
right.
owners have to be able to play every role because you're the fill in when someone calls out. So yesterday I was doing deliveries. It just happens. So
You got to flip that hat around,
yep.
right? But we're looking at trends, right, in business ownership and business
Mm-hmm.
leadership. So it's once that thing becomes like, I'm spending way too much time doing deliveries, then you start having a cause for pause. I know in
Mm-hmm.
our intake call, one of the things we talked about and you're smart to be focused on is kind of your key performance indicators or those few things that you really watch. And so once we start seeing those trends, similar
Mm-hmm.
to, a treatment, you're not going to start with the most aggressive medication. If you've got something, you're probably going to start with something over the counter and,
Mm-hmm.
try to like, okay. And then,
Yeah,
well,
and
this seems
slowly
to
go up.
be
Yep.
progressively getting worse. Well, similarly, as long as we have the systems and business in place to track and be made aware by way of some sort of ownership dashboard or some sort
Mm-hmm.
of key thing that, but it can't be so many that people can't focus. And to your point there, then, by way of being an operator and owner, you're feeling that personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those key things, and I'm interested in any thoughts you have there about the things you've been honest in saying, kind of new to that business, a couple years in. That business
Mm-hmm.
was in decline a bit, if I'm not mistaken, on
Yeah.
purchase. So you had the great from an investment, but it still means you got to do the work to have that hockey stick and have it come back up the other side.
Yep.
So I kind of said a few things in there, but getting back to the focus on just the systems in place, the operational efficiencies.
Mm-hmm.
Did that trigger any thoughts for you? You think people that are about to embark on an entrepreneurial journey or might be in the middle of exactly what you're thinking through? Anything you'd like to share there with us, Cruiz?
Yeah, so I'd say early on, figure out your processes, figure out your workflows. Of course, always be willing to change and edit and improve upon, make the tweaks as needed, but implement your processes and train your staff to those processes. Because the worst thing you can have is you have 2, 3 staff members that all do it their own way, and they just done it that way, and that's how they do it. That's how balls get dropped, things get missed, people don't get their medications on time, patients get upset. It's just, for us, that's a huge thing. So I'll say to any, new business owner, really be thoughtful with your processes and train your team as such, but then be willing to adapt, because things are always going to be able to get improved. So, in one book I've recently listened to again is Traction by Gino. I can't remember the full name.
Yep.
Yeah, but that great book as far as not only building a team actually, but just really getting your processes down. It's so important. So I would definitely say to do that, really put thought into it and implement early. And kind of to your point, you were mentioning, have goals every couple weeks or 90 days, whatever,
Yes.
and
Business
reevaluate.
plan.
Yeah, okay, did we hit our KPI for for us, let's say compounds per day? No, why didn't we? Oh, because we actually hit a wall on our capability with our current team, or was it the processes? Could we streamline processes,
Well
now
said.
jump another 5
Mm-hmm.
and still keep the payroll in control?
That's
So
right.
really thinking about that.
Yes, great point. And I find, especially in the healthcare sector, which we have a number of clients in, that altruism, that natural desire to help, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things in that niche and in the industry of healthcare, find leaders often, to the comment you made earlier about keeping somebody on too long, you're leading with the heart there, right? You're hoping,
Mm-hmm.
you're wanting for them.
Yeah.
But as business lead, it's business, right? And business is numbers. So most things, like buying decisions, are emotional. And the
Mm-hmm.
benefit of having those systems and those onboarding, let's use the hiring and firing scenario as the example.
Right.
So if you've got somebody aboard and they've been there for 3 months, but they never really had any official training, and it was just by
Mm-hmm.
osmosis, you're like, okay, they've been here 3 months, they've been hanging around, they should have known, and I expect more of you. It's really not an onboarding strategy. It
No,
needs to
definitely not.
be, who are, first off, on the front end, right? Who are we looking for? What are the characteristics of that individual? So you have a thoughtful job posting and recruiting strategy and interviewing strategy. So you have some quality options, which is a challenge these days. You might get the applicant, but do they even show up for the interview? Right?
That's happened way too many times. Yes.
I know
It's
it
amazing.
has. But then by way of a consistent, okay, week 1, this is what a farm tech does. Week 2, and so then you can actually not only hold that individual accountable more to where it's just numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did this, didn't do this, excelled in this area, still need work in this area. But also, as time goes by, you're able to identify some trends of, well, this type of personality trait does really well in this position. And we know at least they all had the same opportunity from a starting point, because they all had a consistent experience in how we share what our values are,
Right.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and actually one thing that pops in my head is, one thing I like when you have, good training in place, you're actually going to pull more out of people that you wouldn't even realize. So like, I think having someone come in and having that process that you're training them on, it's great when they ask questions, because we've had it to where they ask a thoughtful question and we're like, you know what, let's tweak this process a little bit. That's a really good thought. So, things that when you're in the day-to-day, sometimes you just don't realize, like, this step isn't really needed, or, oh shoot, this is a gap where mistakes can happen. And by training someone new and having their insight, their thoughtful questions, you can really pinpoint those issues and fix them.
Yeah, they don't have all the calluses and preconceived notions of somebody that's been around or has been frustrated by the trial and error that business just is.
Right.
I've been so grateful for your time on this episode, Cruiz. Any other thoughts in your mind to leave before we conclude with respect to starting a business, especially with a focus on local community? I do want you to make sure to mention the business and address again, many local listeners. So if you're looking for a good, trustworthy, personalized, and capable pharmacy that goes beyond just the typical way of providing those medications and treatments, but also looks at other options that might be less synthetic, is a word I would use. I would definitely recommend checking out Cruiz and his team. Address and any other thoughts?
Medicap Pharmacy and Compounding, and we're at 361 George W. Lyles Parkway in Concord. And I think last thought is, actually, to your point and what you guys do, if you're thinking about starting a business, get a coach, get a mentor, get someone in there to give you advice. We've had probably a half a dozen through our time between the two businesses. We currently actually have like 3 different coaches and mentors. Definitely reach out, try to find one. Action Coach, you guys, I'm sure, are doing great things. Make sure you kind of just reach out and do it, because there's so many things you don't know and you don't want to repeat common mistakes. Just learn from people that have already made them, already experienced them. That way you can just be 5 steps ahead.
That's absolutely right. Thank you for sharing those thoughts, and just that, that affirmation of the value of having somebody that's looking at things differently, maybe able to look a few steps beyond where you're at, because you've got the doors to open, you've got the business to run, you may have somebody calling in like we were talking about. And so whether it be mentor, business partner, business coach, definitely seek out that community. At Action Coach, we do care, and that care is about community, accountability, results, and education, and just becoming a better version of who we are. And I know you and your team there, just from getting to know you a bit, care about your local community, and I applaud you for that. And I appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks again so much for joining. And you all in the Concord area or with specific needs, do you ship as well? Just to answer that question before we close.
Yep. So we deliver within 10 miles from us, and then we ship all over the state. We're also licensed in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, so we can ship to those states as well.
South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida.
Yep.
And North Carolina.
Yep, of course. Yep.
So able to help much more than just the Concord community. So that's wonderful to hear, and continue to see your expanded reach. Thanks again for your time.
All right. Thank you.